Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Nils Palsson. He is running for the U.S. House of Representatives in District 5 in California. Thanks so much for joining us, Nils. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Nils, as you guys know, very important to me, was a delegate for Bernard, which is like a huge A+. So can you kind of tell us about, did you campaign for Bernard, or how did you come about becoming a delegate?
Sure. I mean, I've been probably like a lot of Berners out there tracking Bernie for many years and listening to him on the radio and appreciating his work in the Senate. So when I was getting ready to run for office, I actually ran for Congress in 2016 as well. I took a journey to our nation's capital, and I sort of was interviewing the job like you do for any job, hopefully, is like actually test it out, like, do I want to be working here? So I went to DC and I decided that I wanted to do it. And the very next day, traveling back through New York was when Bernie made his announcement that he was running. So I was like, yeah, this is kind of like, a sign from, whatever it is. So I was running in concert with Bernie throughout all of the 2016 election. And when my district caucuses came around to elect Bernie's delegates, I went to the caucus and I was the second highest vote getter to become a Bernie delegate. A lot of my work that year was focused on my campaign, but I was running as a Bernie-crat. And so it was natural that I was speaking to people who wanted to be voting for Bernie and kind of speaking of us in the same breath, because we need not only a president who, like Bernie, stands for the people, we need a Congress that's actually going to get the laws written and get the work done. So seems like these things go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I was there with you guys at the DNC in July. However, I was on the outside where the fence was. I was one of those angry people, like screaming and supporting you guys.
Yeah,
I was out there.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very hard week for many of us, for sure.
I got respect for people who are still working within the Democratic Party to create change, but that was when I exited, and I'm running as an independent candidate this time around. I was running as a Democrat like Bernie in 2016, but definitely running independent this year.
Yeah, I exited as well. I think it takes too much forgiveness to run as a Democrat. So when you said you were independent, I was hyped because I don't get many of them. So that's definitely good. We need third-party people who have the same platform, but who are willing to run outside of the duopoly. And
I'm challenging a Democrat as well. So, at the time it sort of made sense. I live in a district that's rather progressive, and, Sonoma County, Northern California, Vallejo, this sort of northeast bay of California. So people are progressive. This area was overwhelmingly Bernie country. So at the time, it seemed like Democrat was the way to go. But no, right now, it's people have had enough. People have had enough of the two-party stranglehold. And if you look at the actual Democratic platform, yeah, it's pretty right on. Just like if you look at the Green Party platform, it's pretty right on. But the party thing is not serving us right now. And I think we need to be voting our integrity and voting our heart, voting for candidates that actually stand for the things we care about, not just like what, color shirt they're wearing.
Right on.
I should be wearing a rainbow shirt, but...
I'm wearing a shirt with Bernie being arrested on it, so...
Yeah.
The thing I liked about reading your bio is that, which to me is a litmus test, you have actually been a long time activist and organizer, not just since, November 8th. This has been, a huge part of your life. So do you want to touch on, what initially got you started in your activism?
Sure. I think most awakened citizens have been that way for a while. I was in high school during the Bush years, and I ran an underground newspaper in high school around the time of the Iraq War. I participated in a school walkout at that time, and my care for our people and planet goes back that far, but pretty much that entire time I had the sense that we don't have that much power as citizens. And it felt really frustrating being, I studied history, studied English, and those are sort of, when I went into college, I majored in those two subjects. So I studied history very deeply, and being a part of this country that's, supposedly the freest and the best, and with this whole history of democracy and social movements, that as a citizen, I didn't feel really empowered during a lot of that time. And I participated in grassroots activism all throughout those years, throughout college. But I didn't feel empowered until ultimately around 2008 or so, I started finding doing local grassroots work that was not even partisan, non-political. It was more doing local food sovereignty work, doing local watershed work, and doing local economy work like time banks and a lot of sort of alternative economy stuff. I was working through the transition towns, which is sort of a permaculture, social permaculture, local resilience model. And that's where I started finding some of my empowerment locally. I ended up running a local radio station, or having my own program on a local radio station. And that was really empowering. And it was through that I ended up sort of looping back to the political sphere. So I'd been doing grassroots local organizing all along. And I started realizing that, oh yes, we continue to need to do this transformative work at a meta level. We need to take back the government for the people. And a few years ago, I was looking at Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate. That was around the time I decided to run in 2016 for Congress.
Awesome. You also started a nonprofit as well?
I did not start a nonprofit, but my day job, I'm a working dad. I got a 5-year-old girl and 2 jobs. One of those jobs is teaching science, anatomy, and physiology, and another job is with an environmental nonprofit, which has been around for longer than I've been working for it. It's Transition US. The transitionus.org is the national hub of a global transition towns movement, where people are coming together locally to make life more awesome, in our local towns, have more local food, stronger local economies, local transportation, green energy, all of the things that we need to implement at a sort of meta level through our government. Irrespective of whether the government's going to do it, we got to just start doing it locally, and that's the transition movement. So I've been just doing it locally for the last decade.
Awesome. You're totally correct. Local, we put a lot of stake on the presidential election, and it's obviously important, but you're right that local is imperative to do work for all of us. You also, I was reading your background, and it was, you definitely have a story. You definitely have, my heart was kind of like, I had goosebumps, and it was pretty intense. You actually lost your home by the 2015 Valley Fire.
Totally. Yeah, I was displaced by one of the historic. Yeah, you want a sort of little overview of that story? This was after I decided to run for Congress, actually, in the lead up to the 2016 election. So late 2015, I had gone to DC. Bernie declared. I decided I was going to run for Congress, and came back, and I was just starting to lay the groundwork. And then this huge fire happened, and it was at the time the second most destructive in California's history, the 2015 Valley Fire. I was living right there in Cobb Mountain, in the thick of it. We went very quickly from like being a windy day and noticing some smoke rising on the adjacent mountain to like, oh, there's a fire coming toward us all. We need to evacuate. And hopping in my car and actually driving temporarily toward the fire to, save one of my buddies in that neighborhood that was burning down. He didn't have a car. And going down to sort of the area by the lake that was safe from the fire. And I mentioned that I worked at a local radio station, so there was nobody at the radio station. So me and my hippie friends went and took the radio station over and started this emergency response effort at the radio station that ended up getting published in the BBC and the LA Times and all this, what we were doing through the radio station. The fire did not burn my house down. It came by and like kissed my neighborhood and burned down some of my neighbors' homes. But I was a renter. I'm a working class dude. I was renting, and the people who owned the home ended up getting spooked, and they sold it. So once I temporarily took a break from the campaign, but once it was time to file in February, a few months after the fire, I just still decided I was all in, and I did it. And then shortly after that, found out that I would be losing my home, and I completed the primary kind of in exile and without a home.
Wow.
And then I relocated to Santa Rosa, where this other big fire just happened a few months back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
we're feeling
incredible.
Feeling the effects of climate change and extractive capitalism. Like we're feeling that right here in this place.
Absolutely. You are also a huge advocate for Medicare for all or universal health care. You have a very personal, touching story about that as well. Do you want to share a little about what you have on your page?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and if people do check out my page, it may be linked off the description here, but Nils Palsson is the official page on Facebook. There's a pinned video right now that a local filmmaker helped me with. I mean, this goes back to before I even moved up to Lake County, before I moved to this district. I had been going to college in New York. I was living out there, kind of trying to define myself as a writer and revolutionary and finding my place in the movement. And I got a call from my father back in California that he had leukemia and was getting set to go through chemotherapy. This was years after he had previously lost a lung to lung cancer. So I came back to be with him, and I was his caretaker for that last 8 months of his life. And going through this for-profit healthcare system and being actually denied the highest quality care and some of the treatments that the doctors were recommending because he wasn't insured and wasn't able to pay out of pocket tens of thousands of dollars for certain treatments. And then once he was on hospice care, like, in the last very few weeks of his life, we were getting all these crazy bills in the mail for, $100,000, $200,000 for his hospital stays. And he was already in debt. There was no way he was going to be able to pay that. So he ended up dying deep in medical debt, and his home was foreclosed on after that. His wife, who is an immigrant from China, ended up having to move out of their home, and she was displaced across the bay. And yeah, I mean, I've very much before then, I was already defining myself as a peaceful democratic revolutionary and seeing a need for big change. And this was a year after the film Sicko came out. Our sort of conscious progressive society was more and more aware of some of these other models of healthcare that exist in Europe and Cuba and elsewhere of quality healthcare for all. So it was there as an idea, but this I started really viscerally living it at that time, and I've carried that passion with me. I want to give everyone who's living right now that system that my father didn't have, of actual quality healthcare. Even if you're not, part of the wealthiest 0.1%, you deserve the best healthcare. Everybody does.
No doubt. I've worked in healthcare for almost a decade, so I see some shit. It's not easy. It's hard when you're an empath. I can tell you that much.
Totally.
Yeah. We are in desperate need of that.
My sweetheart's a midwife, and she's a nurse midwife at a big hospital, and she's always coming home with stories of also obviously beautiful things, being there to attend the miracle of life and support women and children through this miracle, but then also seeing sort of the underside of the for-profit healthcare system. And I'm constantly hearing stories of it. And it's also deeply connected to the student debt crisis, because so many of these, even, some progressives like to sort of scoff at highly paid doctors and physicians and stuff who are getting six-figure salaries, but a lot of them are paying as much on their student loans as they are for housing. They're, renting for $1,000 or $2,000 a month or whatever, and they're paying twice that for their student loans. So there's sort of parallel crises in healthcare and education right now that we need to tend to.
That's a really good point. And on your platform, you do have free college tuition.
Yeah, I would even take it a step further than that. Bernie Sanders talked about tuition-free public colleges, right? Community colleges and public universities. That's a place to start. I think we also need to put something in place to actually catch the millions of people who are already, tens of millions of people who are already suffering under stifling student debt. So great. Yes, absolutely. Tuition-free public colleges and universities. We've got more than enough in the bank accounts of the wealthiest 0.1%. We've got more than enough in our military to account for some improvements in our educational system, and then some to actually help relieve some of these people who are suffering under student debt. Like myself, I'm well into student debt after working toward a master's degree, and I know people who are even deeper in than I am, and yeah, we need relief.
I'm going to digress a minute, but I used to work for federal student loans for like 5 years for the Commonwealth of PA. And there is something called a, anyway, so my mind went blank. But anyway, it's, if you serve, in a public,
public service, forgiveness thing.
Right, loan forgiveness. So you should definitely look into that because it's 10 years and it sounds like you're pretty damn close. So yeah, I would definitely, because they'll just write the whole thing off if you could do it for 10 years. So I would definitely look into that. I'm glad you knew what I was talking about because I haven't worked there in a few years and I couldn't think of it. So anyway, something you also talked about on your platform, which in my opinion, too many candidates don't bring up, is for-profit prison. And also the correlation of cannabis and people of color and everything like that. So what is your stance on that and what would you like to see happen?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I live in a state that recently decriminalized marijuana, not just medically, but recreationally. I think that was a huge, bold move in the right direction. There's another crisis. We've got so many crises that we're dealing with in this world. One of them is this incarceration crisis, which cuts very much to the core of racism in our country. It's absolutely like a racial bias, against people of color. And yeah, we absolutely need to, decriminalize a lot of these substances, and we need to do something to end this racialized crisis of mass incarceration. And the fact that, I mean, if there was not already for-profit prisons and we were just locking people up in not-for-profit prisons, that would suck too. But the fact that there are actual people that are making money off of this is completely grotesque. And I mean, it's crazy also that it's right there in the 13th Amendment, right? Like there shall be no more slavery or involuntary servitude unless you're a criminal. Then we can enslave you. And I feel like that's the next sort of charge that Congress is going to need to take on once we have a people's Congress that's in there that's actually caring for the people. That we don't need to be seeing all these folks locked up, especially so disproportionately, men of color. It's awful.
So yeah. On that line, as far as California, when people are not being necessarily arrested for cannabis anymore. However, are people getting out who have been imprisoned for that?
No, I mean, not in the numbers that we need to be seeing, and that would take executive action, to like commute folks' sentences, which could be done by the president. Obviously, good luck. And the governor could be doing that as well. And, to my knowledge, that's not happening, or at least not happening on the scale that it needs to be happening on.
Yeah, totally agree. Obviously, you're also a huge environmentalist. What things do you think we need to focus on primarily to change, and how do we go about that change?
So, great. Okay. There's almost this unspoken awareness that we need to be doing something, right? Like we look at what's going on with our environment and the living world that we co-inhabit and that we're stewarding right now for the generations to come. That the world was not given to us by our parents, but that it's been loaned to us by future generations. And, rather than abusing it and crushing it, we need to be cherishing it. There's a variety of things we need to be doing. The law, the whole point of law and taxes and everything, one of the main reasons it exists is social engineering, to affect outcomes by sort of guiding things the way that we conscious citizens see that they need to go. So if we see that there's a problem with emissions, with CO2 emissions, we can create laws that sort of make it less enticing to be emitting CO2, which could, mean charging for CO2 emissions in different ways, taxing CO2 intensive projects, and then also giving incentives and tax relief, for example, to projects that are regenerative and restorative. So right now we have an economy that's needing a boost. So many people from the manufacturing sector have been losing their jobs for so long. We're aware that we need to be, rebuilding our infrastructure. We could be doing it in a green way and creating so many jobs, so much opportunity for people. And meanwhile, greening America, reducing our carbon footprint by using the tax system to incentivize the types of jobs that we want to see, incentivize the types of programs that we want to see. Kind of like the idea of a Green New Deal, which has been spoken of by different people across the political spectrum, including even some conservatives, all the way out to the Greens, that, okay, we want to see jobs. We want to see jobs in the Rust Belt. We want to see jobs in the manufacturing districts in the East Bay and in Vallejo and Richmond and all these places that used to be manufacturing weapons of war, or places that used to be mining steel. Well, all these folks need work. And meanwhile, the sun is this free, amazing source of energy. The wind is this free, amazing source of energy. If we're installing and creating green systems, that's going to not only reduce our carbon impact, it's going to create a ton of jobs, and that's exactly what we need right now. So I also, while I say this, I want to just inject this note of humility that I don't purport to have all the answers myself. I think what I have is the care and the heart, and I feel like we're doing it all together. We're this sort of common beating heart of this planet that's trying to live, and this humanity that's actually trying to prevail despite these crazy odds that are against us. And it's in our power of coming together in the diversity of our ideas that the strength is. And so I'm interested in winning this race and surrounding myself with the best and brightest minds that are going to work together on these projects. And I'm open to all sorts of input. So if you got the solution for the energy crisis and for the climate crisis, bring it on, because we need everybody's gifts to come shining through right about now.
Yeah, good point. Rob, actually, he's in our peer. He is asking if you're in favor of a federal job guarantee.
That's an interesting term. I don't know if I've actually taken that on as something that I haven't used that language, for example, yet. A federal job guarantee. I like the sound of it, and I'm interested in learning more. I don't know if Rob wants to share a little bit more of that. I mean, I have seen some of these examples of things like, a guaranteed living wage, or guaranteed basic income and things like that. And some of these projects are actually really amazing of what they're doing. Once people's basic needs are met, when we're creating a society where people already have housing, already have healthcare, already have top quality education, and already have food, we're so free to liberate our gifts. And if you look around nature, in natural ecosystems, there is no unemployment. Look in a forest, there's no unemployment. Every organism is doing something. So I don't know, it's not something that's currently on my policy page. Guaranteed was the term that you used? Guaranteed work?
Federal job guarantee. But
that sounds like there's something to it. And I definitely want.
There is. I mean, it's a pretty amazing concept, but it's also feasible. Basically, if you are unemployed and you are desiring work, you want work, you're having trouble finding work, the federal government gives you a job. They guarantee you anyone who wants a job, they will create one if there is not one. It's really that simple. I mean,
yeah, why the F not? I mean, we look back at history, and the presidents, for example, that we regard as some of the most cherished, like FDR, part of why FDR is respected so much is the legacy of the New Deal and all the jobs that were created. And people are out there raring to work and provide for their families and actually even contribute to society. Absolutely, let's create some jobs. It's going to. I know to us, it's like willing, but I'm willing. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah. It's. I don't know. I think we talk a lot about this as progressives, but it almost seems like it is by design. The way things are moving. So yes, that option is totally there. However, they just haven't brought it to fruition. Something else we talk about frequently on RP is MMT. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, can you tell me? But this is not something that's been huge on my radar. But I've had people speaking more and more about this. But how would you want to present that?
It's modern monetary theory, And basically, to sum it up, it's federal taxes do not fund spending. So the government is perpetuating the debt. We can't do this unless we cut this and all of that stuff. And when it comes down to it, they have the ability already to do everything we need to do. It's the fear mongering. We can't afford it. Meanwhile, austerity is rampant. So basically, it's the Bernie's economic advisor, Stephanie Kelton. She teaches it as well. So I would definitely look into more of that. I mean, granted, you're in California, but still, it puts a lot of things into perspective. Let's see what Mark is saying, because he's our... Oh, yes. He said much of FDR's ideas are supported by MMTers, and that's definitely true. Let's see, Mark's the... he's also the best at puns.
So yeah, I'm seeing the comments too. I'm all about what you're saying. It seems like this is something that's absolutely describing what's implicitly within me anyway. So, without actually trying to claim or grab onto something that is not, authentically mine yet, I just want to say this sounds like exactly what I'm thinking about, what I'm talking about anyway, which is the fact that, we don't need to let fear stop us from doing the things that we know we need to do, especially when we look around, there are plenty of resources. There is an abundance. The issue is not in the abundance of resources or our ability. The issue is in the way that we're sharing. And so we need to be sharing more effectively.
Absolutely. Something else you talk about is getting the money out of politics. This is, progressives are well aware that pretty much every single problem comes back to this one thing. So why did you decide to run People's Campaign and, agree not to take any PAC money or anything like that?
Because it's being sickened by the fact and the way and the magnitude at which it's happening that actually got me to run to begin with. Well, after this fire happened that displaced me from my home in 2015, it was like, the very beginning of 2016, it was time to declare or not whether I wanted to run. And the thing that tipped me over toward running was that I was awake late at night clicking around on the Federal Election Commission website, the FEC, which tracks all the campaign expenditures and where all the money's coming from. And I was looking at my Democratic incumbent. Everyone's like, at least we got a good old Democrat. Well, if you look at where the good old Democrat's getting his money, it's the same place as the good old Republicans are getting their money. And it's like one thing to talk about it and think about it and like, oh yeah, that's right. There's money in politics. There's corporate money in politics. But to actually look at the line items, like, why is Walmart giving $10,000 to my Democratic incumbent? Why are there, dozens of too big to fail banks? JP Morgan, Chase, one after another, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all of these huge banks. Why are they all giving $10,000? Why is every huge weapons manufacturer, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Honeywell, why are they all giving all this money to this guy? Why is Big Pharma, Merck, why is, health insurance giants, telecom giants, and then we wonder why we're not getting universal health care, why we're not having net neutrality, why the military budget is as high as it is. So, obviously, no matter what issue we care about, if it's like, okay, I care about education, I care about climate change, well, all of these issues draw directly back to the fact that we have a House packed with representatives on both sides of the aisle that are taking crazy amounts of disgusting money from the world's most toxic corporations. And I like to be like the positive guy, the like love and peace and ideas guy that's like, come on, let's get together, we can do this, and it's all about people power. So I don't like to like talk too much about the nasty, but there is some serious nasty that I'm going up against. And I know Bernie was dealing with it too when he was running for president, and that's why that was so inspirational, that like the $27 concept. Even just the basic fees of running, like if you're not trying to like get yard signs up, and if you're not trying to have TV spots or whatever, just to get on the ballot, most working class people are priced out of it, at least in my part of the country. It's like was a couple $1,000s to file, and then another 10 grand plus to get your candidate statement sent home to everybody. And so the last 2 days I've been driving around giving my ballot statement to all the counties in my district and paying these checks to have, me sent home in the official voter guide. So most working class folks are priced out. I had to like dip into my own savings, which is like, all right, hopefully those $27 checks are going to keep coming in, because that's how we do it, grassroots style. But there's a crisis, and if we want to do something about it, that's it. I mean, we need to put our time on it together. We need to put our energy on it, and like our social shares and everything. And we got to put our money on it together from the people, $5 at a time, because that's how we're going to go, combat those $10,000 checks that are coming to our representatives from, these toxic banks and fossil fuel companies.
No doubt. I had the privilege of interviewing Congressman Ro Khanna, and he actually came up with legislation to have congressmen and women sign a pledge that said that they will no longer take, corporations' money. And including Ro, there are 6 who signed it in all of Congress.
That's like the miracle 6, right? I feel like we should have to, all the candidates even should have to have it like emblazoned on our jackets, like in the House of Representatives, like kind of like a NASCAR driver, like
exactly.
Like Texaco here and Pfizer here. Like it would be just covering these guys, all the companies that are given to them. And because most citizens are not going to click around on, on maplight.org and on fec.gov and stuff. Like people aren't going to do that, but we need to find a way to get this in folks' face. I'm running against such an entrenched, established Democrat. He's a 10-term, 2 decades been camping out on the Hill, taking this big money from these guys. And when I ran 2 years ago, one of the local papers, which is owned by a huge media conglomerate, obviously, it said something in one of their op-eds that said it would take a miracle like Mike Thompson being announced as the Zodiac killer for him to lose this. That's the guy I'm running against. They said it would take a revelation that he was the Zodiac killer for him to lose this. I'm like, no, it would really just take your paper printing where he gets his money. If you ran an article with the logos of the companies that gave him the money that he's winning these elections with, that would do it.
Mm-hmm. So he's Ted Cruz, or
I mean, yeah,
one Zodiac killer. Oh my gosh, that's very comparable to Trump saying he could walk down Fifth Avenue or whatever and shoot someone and still get votes. It's kind of that's a very creepy way to look at things, to be that assured that you're going to win. But Hillary was assured as well, so we saw how that worked out. Is that all you're running against? Is what's that?
No, I mean, is that the democracy that we're living in, where you already know who's going to win before the candidates are even declared? That's gross. What were you going to say?
Yeah, lack of democracy for sure. So how many people are you running against? Is there another independent, a Green, or just one Dem?
There is a race of 4. And in 2016, when I ran, there was a race of 4 as well. Last time around, I came in 3rd with like 12% of the vote, and a Republican had 19%. Then there were 3 Democrats, and I was one of them. So this time, the field is incumbent 10-term Democrat with deep pockets, your standard issue Republican, who's, there's always a Republican. There's myself running no party preference, having been a Bernie delegate and representing the sort of progressive end of the spectrum. And then there is a Green candidate who was actually one of my supporters last time around. And much respect for the guy. I feel like I've got more of a chance of actually doing it. So that's why I'm here. I got mad love for the Greens. I got to meet Jill Stein this summer. I love the Green Party platform and the note that they're holding in all of this. And I'm all about building an additional party so that we're not just relying on 2. And also right now, I feel like it's really unlikely for someone with a Green Party badge to win this particular election just because of the way identity plays into the elections. That like I could be out here, representing exactly what Bernie Sanders would as a progressive Democrat, or very similar to what Jill Stein would as a Green, but doing it with no party declaration, running as an independent, and that in my district, that is going to sing to more people who are just fed up and sick of the 2-party system, but not quite ready to say like, well, I'm in the Green Party.
Yeah, Jill's very nice. I met her this summer as well, and she was even nice when I told her that I didn't vote for her. I wrote Bernie in.
Good show.
I was real stealthy. So speaking of the no party preference votes, we saw this with Byrne. We saw over 3 million ballots wind up in boxes in California, and no party preference just went uncounted and were disregarded. So can you kind of touch on how that would be different in a non-presidential election? Like, are you confident that those paper ballots will be counted this time?
I mean, there's a crisis with voters being disenfranchised, and I think it speaks a lot to the status of our democratic republic that we have to have conversations like this, and that I actually need to say something like, no, I'm not entirely confident that all the ballots are going to be counted. But that's something that's a little bit outside the scope of what I feel like I can do something about. I mean, I can get in this race and I can run and I can be true to my ideals and to my integrity and my authenticity. And hopefully they're going to count the votes. Hopefully there's not something that's super, wacko crazy going on with the votes. I honestly don't know. I wish that we had a very simple public paper trail that's just, all right, we're going to just count these in front of you all right now. Like they do in some countries, like the Brexit vote, and in every, in every neighborhood, everyone was stooped over the table looking at the pieces of paper.
Yeah, I mean, in Pennsylvania, we have closed primaries and it sucks. But, something I definitely suggest to you is have some volunteers from your campaign be observers, because they could certainly do that. I would definitely recommend that just for that extra assurance. You also put some things on your website about immigrants. What's your take on DACA and everything that's happening to the families dealing with that right now?
Yeah, did you see that video of the mother being taken from her daughter?
I did.
The daughter screams. So I mean, I live in a district that's in Northern California, but a lot of Latinos around here and a lot of people from different countries and diverse backgrounds. And the most important race to me is the human one that we all belong to, and the community of life that we all belong to. And I'm really not interested in kicking someone out of my country that was stolen to begin with and sent away because they weren't born here or don't have the right papers. That reminds me of Nazi Germany. That reminds me of Orwellian, dystopian stories that I've read, and I don't want that to be the country that I live in. And I much prefer the credo that we have written at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. That's what this country stands for, as being a place of refuge for human beings to come to. And so I'm absolutely in favor of deeply just immigrant rights, in which we're creating a place for everybody here. There's not a shortage of space for people. There's not a shortage of opportunities. There's just a problem with racism and xenophobia that we're transforming. So yeah, I mean, I stand with Black and brown people and people of all colors and all backgrounds, and including our dreamers. And I'm actually running against the Hillary superdelegate, who was one of the 72 Dems a couple of weeks ago, who threw the dreamers under the bus. So, I mean, that's for the sake of political expediency, right? We need to honor that this country is made up of immigrants. Just because my immigrant came here a couple of generations ago from one of the countries of white people, like, that doesn't make that immigrant any better than my friends on the block here who came from Guatemala and Mexico. So.
No doubt, and you do talk a lot about indigenous people as well, which is really important, especially we all got a rude awakening on Standing Rock. I mean, that was, can you explain what watching that play out was like for you?
Sure. Well, I mean, we're all living in a country that's been colonized. That's like, in most places in the world, people can say that, but we're living in a place that's been colonized, and this is land that was peopled by huge nations of human beings long before the Europeans came here and colonized it. And people were, living in harmony with each other, by and large, living in harmony with the planet, by and large. When I was living in Lake County in Northern California, I built some deep bonds of solidarity with some local indigenous elders, including one man who was, his name was Clayton Duncan. He was the descendant of one of the sole survivors of this Clear Lake massacre, the Bloody Island massacre. You can look it up on Wikipedia if you're out there. It's one of the many instances of, an entire village of indigenous people being wiped out by white soldiers 150 years ago. So this man ended up having a yearly forgiveness ceremony, like forgiving the white, colonizer, forgiving everybody for these, atrocities, so we could actually live together on the land. So we did these sunrise ceremonies every year. We came together and started doing water ceremonies every year at sunrise to honor this lake that we were living around. Seeing what happened at Standing Rock, it's in our face. It seemed like this is the stand of our time right now, when all of the forces of extraction, the extractive capitalist, imperialist forces were up against the forces of good and the rainbow warriors of light, who are standing with the water and standing for future generations and standing in love. And yeah, absolutely, that was tragic seeing what went down, and it's not over. Standing Rock itself isn't over. That's not the last pipeline. The black snake is still trying to cross the land and still trying to pollute the waters, and it's still on us to make that stand. And along with physically stopping them from building the pipeline and all the work, that's happening in indigenous communities and allied communities, and, these moments of former soldiers coming to kneel at the feet of the indigenous elders and apologize. There's more work to do. And, to add on to that, we need to be electing water protectors all across the country to every level of office, because that's water is life, and we need to be protecting that which gives life to all.
Right on. If there's something you want to, like a last thought you want to leave with our viewers, what is something you want to talk to them about to encourage them to check out your webpage and follow you and hopefully even donate?
I mean, thank you even just for being here to begin with. I feel like there's every part in the chorus is needed. Every specific organism out there doing our part. So if you're interested in anything that I've had to say, just gratitude for being here. I would love it if you'd be willing to share this. There's only so much that one person can do. And you may have heard that the old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm interested in us going far together. And so if folks are willing to join this campaign, it's absolutely a grassroots effort. And there are human beings from my community that are working with me on this, just retired people, students, teachers, nurses, artists, we're coming together to do this. And I know this is a national podcast and it's being seen by people all around the globe, or Facebook Live, whatever you want to call this. To say that the United States House of Representatives is making laws that impact us all. And so that even if you happen to live outside this district, your support is still incredibly important, because if we want to see this progressive political revolution take place, and we could all get behind a president like Bernie Sanders, that's great. And no matter what president we elect, we need to have the Congress that's going to get the laws passed and get the job done. So I'm here for my constituents in my district, and I'm here for this entire Earthship home that we're all sharing. And so I would absolutely love your shares. And if you want to check me out, there's a Facebook page, Nils Palsson, and you can probably see it right on there on the comments, how to spell my name. There's a group, Nils Palsson for Congress. There's the website itself, nilsforcongress.com. I'm running a campaign that's completely grassroots with no corporate money, no super PAC money. It's coming in on those $27 donations from humans. So if you got 27 on it or 5 on it, that's how I'm going up against this Goliath of huge toxic corporations. So I would embrace your support in that way. You just being a part of the revolution. Support all these candidates that are doing it in your district, in the neighboring district, across the country. We all got to do it together. That's how we're gonna prevail ultimately.
Yep, the power of the people is stronger than the people in power, for sure.
We need to remember, like, I know it's all about, like, actually we need to, like, open our fist and trust and give, but, like, when we make this symbol, we're making the symbol of community, of, like, this is a sacred thing right here, that, like, all these little things can be broken, but when you put us together, like, that's us. That's the little fish coming together to, like, get the shark that's terrorizing them. So,
for sure. Yes, thank you so much. People are definitely giving you a lot of love in the comments.
Thank you all.
Yeah, so everybody please share. What's that?
Oh, and I just saw one of Mark's comments, but yeah, Nestle is buying up resources in our district. Our, you know, aquifers are being bled dry by these extractive companies. But, you know, people are concerned. People are concerned about other, you know, toxic cement plants that are being put in and crude by rail. And there are a lot of things that are going on in this district that people care about. And if we want to actually see action on it, you know, in a good way, in a real way that's going to take care of our planet, we gotta start changing the people who we elect. And if we have a 10% approval rating of Congress, that should be the re-election rate as well, not 90%.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Nils. You are awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Today I posted a promo on my page and our Peace page. The wonderful Levy Sanders, Bernie's son, is going to be joining me on the 21st for an exclusive. I'm going to be the first independent media interview he's doing. So I'm pretty hype about that. So again, thank you guys for watching, and thank you again, Nils.
Yeah, thank you so much. Luck. Been an honor.
Absolutely. Take care.
You as well.